The dress was a soft shade of purple with pleats at the waist and delicate patterns near the neckline. Nothing fancy, just something Marcus once said made my eyes sparkle. I hadn't worn it since his funeral. That morning I ironed it carefully, smoothing out each wrinkle, as if helping the fabric remember better times. In the kitchen, a tin of lemon cookies cooled on the counter. As a child, Alex used to sneak them from the tray with sugar on his chin, his eyes wide with surprise that I had baked them just for him. If this story touches your heart, do not forget to click subscribe and tell me what city or country you are watching from. I am truly curious to know where my voice is being heard today. I left early for the vineyard, almost 2 hours away on a hill overlooking rows of vines and gravel paths. When I arrived, the valet greeted my car silently. The lobby smelled of eucalyptus and lemon oil, the kind of expensive scent that announced you were somewhere special. I entered alone, carrying the cookie tin wrapped in white cloth, like I used to carry cupcakes to Alex's school events. At the welcome table, a young woman with headphones checked her list. "Name?" she asked politely. I told her, and she handed me a name tag that simply said, Emma, in small letters. Nothing more. No mention that I was the groom's mother, no special ribbon, just a name like any other guest. I walked slowly through the main hall, where white chairs lined a long aisle decorated with rose petals and crystal lights. Alex stood by the altar in a perfect suit, his smile rehearsed. He didn't see me. Sarah looked beautiful and calm beside him, surrounded by her family's warm hugs and natural laughter. That closeness I no longer had. A man with headphones led me to my seat at table 17, far away, near a side door. The front tables had signs, bride's family, groom's friends, and parents of the wedding party. Mine only said, Emma. I sat between a woman from the countryside who raised sheep and a man who sold insurance. They were friendly and curious, not knowing I was Alex's mother. I didn't tell them. When the toasts began, Sarah's father spoke first, then her brother, then her college friend. Someone made a joke about parties and dorm rooms. Everyone laughed. At one point, someone asked if the groom's mother would speak. Sarah smiled softly and said maybe later, after more wine was poured. Dinner was served quietly. I picked a dry chicken and pushed bread around my plate. No one at my table finished their food. The dessert was lemon cake that looked better than it tasted. I took one bite and felt the sourness cut through the sweetness. Alex never came to my table. He danced with Sarah, then with her mother, then with an aunt. The photographer walked past me twice without taking my picture. I smiled anyway. I folded my napkin carefully, placed it by my glass, and left quietly. A week later, Alex called and invited me to dinner. Just us, he said. Sarah would be out with friends. He sounded too cheerful when he agreed. I pulled out the sweater that still smelled faintly of cedar from the trunk at the foot of my bed, among old quilts and baby blankets I'd never found a reason to give away. It was the same cream-colored sweater with soft pearl buttons I'd worn the day I brought Alex home from the hospital. I put it on without fuss, pulled my hair back, and packed oatmeal cookies in a tin lined with paper. His new house sat on the edge of town in one of those neighborhoods with perfect sidewalks and matching streetlights. The kind of place where every yard looked approved by someone in charge. I parked on the street and walked slowly up the path, noticing the security camera under the roof. The porch light turned on automatically when I got close. Alex opened the door before I knocked. He smiled quickly and tightly. "Come in, Mom," he said, giving me a hug that barely reached my shoulders. The hallway smelled of new carpet and lavender cleaning spray. In the kitchen, the table was already set with 2 plates, 2 wine glasses, and an open bottle in the center. But there were no cooking smells, no heat from the oven, not even the sound of something warming. What I saw was a neat stack of papers held down by a blue pen placed on top. He poured wine carefully, complimented my cookies, and asked about my drive. Everything seemed practiced, like lines rehearsed in front of a mirror. Then, with a rehearsed smile, he pointed to the documents. "Just something to have ready," he said casually. "In case something happens, it makes everything easier." I reached for the stack. The title read, "Power of Attorney." Legal words filled the margins: financial authority, property deals, starts right away. The word agent appeared several times. I looked up. He was still smiling. "It's just smart planning," he continued. "Everyone does it." I placed the documents back on the table. "I'll take them home and look them over carefully," I said, keeping my voice calm. His eyes flicked to the pen, then to me. He nodded too quickly. We talked about nothing important after that. The weather, a neighbor's new fence, a TV show I didn't know. He didn't mention the documents again. When I got up to leave, he gave me another brief hug, gentler than the first. The porch light came on again as I stepped outside. I drove home with the untouched tin of cookies on the passenger seat, the papers beside me, untouched from the visit. I didn't take off my coat when I got home. I sat on the couch with the stack of documents in my lap and stared at them until the kitchen clock stopped feeling real. That night I remembered something Marcus had said years ago when we updated our wills. He looked at me across the table and said, "If anything happens to me, look in the basement. You'll know when it's time." The house felt heavy and quiet in that way it does when something changes inside. I walked down the basement stairs slowly, my knees stiff, the handrail cold against my palm. Behind boxes labeled "Christmas lights" and "baby things," I found a small metal box under a shelf, hidden behind a sheet. It was heavier than expected and cold to the touch. I carried it to the folding table and opened it with shaking hands. Inside, everything was organized perfectly. Of course it was. This was Marcus's work. A leather folder labeled with my full name, envelopes marked with dates, and printed bank statements with tabs and bright highlighter marks. At the bottom was a single handwritten note, folded once with my name on the front in his careful handwriting. "Emma," it read. "I know you won't ask for help even when you need it. That's why I made sure you're never trapped. Everything you find here is yours, protected and safe. Don't tell Alex. Not because I don't love him, but because I've seen what happens when people think they deserve something. Money doesn't change people, it reveals them." I read it twice, then again more slowly. The documents showed 2 savings accounts, a deed to a property in San Miguel. I didn't remember discussing retirement money from his old job. In total, they added up to a little over 140 million pesos. I stood there for a long time. I didn't cry or even feel relief, just calm. What I felt wasn't safety, it was something heavier. The weight of being seen and protected before I even knew I was disappearing. Upstairs, the papers Alex had given me were still waiting on the kitchen table. I took them, gently placed them in a drawer, and started making coffee. I knew a call would come soon. The call came 2 mornings later as I sat in the sunroom with lukewarm coffee and a crossword puzzle I rarely finished. Alex's name lit up the screen. I let it ring twice before answering. "Hi, Mom," he said cheerfully, but controlled. We talked about small things, the weather, his new fence, and Sarah trying a new recipe. Then his voice got softer in that way people use when they want something to sound like concern instead of control. "I just wanted to see if you looked at those papers yet," he said. "I saw them," I replied. A pause. "Barely there, but I heard it. It's just, well, you know how things are at your age," he continued carefully. "Heart attacks, memory problems. I read an article about a woman who lost access to her bank accounts for months. And a friend of Sarah's, her mom forgot all her passwords after a fall." He laughed softly, as if it were all common sense. "I just think it's easier to fix everything now while you're still sharp." Sharp. He said it as if I were already fading, as if I should hurry and sign before I forgot my own name. I looked at the corner of the rug where it was beginning to fray. My fingers traced the rim of the coffee cup, letting his voice fade. I wasn't angry, not even surprised. I thought of that snowstorm in '97 when Alex's car broke down on the highway. He was 20, stranded in the cold, and scared. I packed soup and an extra blanket and drove 5 hours through ice to bring him a tire. He hugged me with frozen fingers and called me his hero. Now here he was, quietly seeking control over everything I'd worked for, speaking to me as if I were a problem to solve. "I'll think about it," I said simply. "Okay," he answered quickly. "No pressure. Sarah and I just want to help. We found a financial advisor who can explain everything to you." We hung up, and I stared at the trees outside bending in unexpected wind. I found Rosa Martinez's number written in pencil on an old birthday card tucked in a recipe book. She'd sent the card the winter Marcus died. I had brought her soup for 3 weeks after her husband's funeral, back when she was still practicing law and I was learning to be alone. When she answered, her voice had aged, but the strength was still there. I told her only what mattered. She didn't interrupt, just let the words fall where they needed to. When I finished, she said, "Come over tomorrow. I'll make coffee. Bring everything." Her house was smaller than I remembered, with the kind of order that comes from living with loss long enough to make peace with it. She greeted me at the door with a tired smile, took my coat, and placed the documents on the kitchen table as if they were something we could face together. She read silently, page by page, glasses low, eyes sharp. When she finished, she looked up and said, "This isn't to protect you, Emma. It's written to control you." We spent the next 3 hours going through everything Marcus had left behind. Rosa explained it clearly. The accounts were protected, the property was secure, and the retirement money was well managed. I could put everything in a private trust under my complete control, with rules so strong that no one could touch it. We added a medical clause that said any authority would only change if 2 independent doctors declared in writing that I was mentally unable to make decisions. Not one doctor, not family, not Alex. When it came time to sign, she handed me the pen and said, "Take your time." I didn't need to. My hand was steady, not because I was angry or trying to prove something. I signed because I could, because Marcus had trusted me to hold the line. We filed the originals, made copies, and kept them in a thick folder. Rosa told me to keep it somewhere nearby but not obvious. That night I put it under the kitchen sink, behind a box of dishwasher soap that no one would move. The drive home was quiet, the sky flat and gray. I rolled the window down halfway and let the air sting a little, reminding myself I was still here. A text came through as I parked. It was from Alex. He wanted dinner again. Just the 2 of us. This time, he said, no papers. Just a simple meal, no pressure. I stared at the screen for a long moment, then typed one word, "Sure." But this time, I wouldn't go alone. I met Rosa a block away, and she waited in her car while I went inside. Alex answered the door in jeans and a casual shirt, looking like he'd tried to dress down on purpose. The house smelled of garlic and roasting vegetables, real food this time. But I saw them anyway, fresh papers placed casually on an end table next to the wine. I waited until we'd finished most of the food before he brought them over. "I talked to a friend who works in elder law," he said softly. "He said there's an easier way to do this." I didn't look at his papers. Instead, I took a single sheet from my purse and placed it on top of his stack. His eyes went wide as he read the completed trust, signed and official, clearly listing me as the sole owner and authority. "I've taken care of everything," I said calmly. "But thank you." Then Rosa walked in as if she belonged there. "Good evening," she said, nodding at Alex. "Emma, ready to go?" I stood up, gathered my things, and followed her to the door without looking back. The next morning brought a text just before 10, "You made this harder than it needed to be." That was it. No greeting, no kindness, just guilt disguised as an ending. I set the phone face down and poured the orange juice I'd made earlier down the drain. It had gone warm, and I didn't want it anymore. That afternoon, Sarah texted, "Sorry things got awkward. We were trying to plan responsibly. You raised a strong son. We only wanted to support your future." I read her words twice. They were gentle on the surface, but underneath lay something sharper, as if a line had been drawn and I'd stepped over it. I didn't respond. That week I began spending time at the downtown library, not to read, but to be in a quiet place where no one expected anything of me. There I met Carmen, who brought crossword puzzles and always offered candy. Anna, who knitted quietly in a corner. Sophia, who carried a cane she rarely used except when someone was watching. We didn't share details, but over time we began to recognize the shapes of each other's grief. One morning, Sophia invited me to help with the garden behind the building. The soil was hard and uneven. Together we turned it over row by row with our hands in the earth. We planted tomatoes and basil, and a few sunflowers just because we were stubborn. We called it the quiet corner. I didn't think much about Alex while planting. And when I did, it didn't hurt like it used to. Something had changed, not healed, but cleared. One morning, as I walked home with dirt still under my fingernails, I saw a car parked across the street. Alex sat inside with his hands on the wheel, as if unsure whether to stay or go. I watched him from the kitchen window, the kettle warming on the stove. After a few minutes, he got out without a folder this time, just a white envelope held loosely in one hand. He walked up the porch steps slowly and sat like he had when he was a kid, waiting for dinner to be ready. Back hunched, elbows on his knees. When I opened the door, he looked up. His face was tired but softer than I remembered. "I'm sorry," he said. "I let money speak louder than love. I didn't mean to, but I did." I wasn't quick to answer. I sat next to him, not close, but not far either. The wood creaked under our weight. We listened to the breeze in the trees for a moment before I spoke. "I forgive you," I said. "But forgiveness doesn't come with a key." He nodded. He didn't argue, just put the envelope between us on the step, and stood up. "Thank you," he said, and walked back to the car. I didn't take the envelope right away. I sat, letting the silence fill the space he left. That night I wrote a letter, not to him, but to the woman I used to be, the one who folded napkins perfectly and believed love meant always saying yes. I told her it was okay to stop holding everything, that she could sit down now. The weight had been carried far enough. Later, I baked a small cake, just one layer, just for me. I lit a candle and made a wish I didn't say out loud.